right, welcome, Jen. How we doing?
Good.
You really doing good?
I am.
You're nervous though.
I totally am. I have butterflies in
How
my
come?
stomachs. I don't know. I'm just not like. I don't know. I don't know why I'm nervous.
Talking about yourself and
Yes.
stuff you've been through is not easy. You know?
Yeah.
But Brody's here. He's here to help us out.
That's good.
Those who are watching this episode will hear some tick, 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 tick when I put him down in a second because
Yes,
he's got long toenails.
he does.
But he's
and
here-
I would love to hold him.
He's
'cause
here to
he'd be my
comfort
therapy
you.
dog.
He's here to look at you in judgment. Don't worry. No, but I wanted to have you on. Obviously, you've had a lot of different struggles, but a lot of them start with health struggles, right?
Yes.
And so you have cystic fibrosis.
Very good. Winner, winner,
Yeah.
chicken dinner.
Oh, good. I'm hungry. So what, you said you pulled up a definition. So
I did.
Why don't you start with that and tell
Well,
us kind of.
I pulled up
What
a
is it?
definition because living with it my whole life, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
You know, so the simple definition, excuse me while I look at my phone with my old lady eyes, a genetic disease that causes the body to produce thick mucus that clogs organs, airways, leading to chronic infections and other health problems.
How were you born with that?
I was.
Okay. So your parents were told.
So it started with my nieces. So my dad's sister had two girls that were born with it as well.
Yeah.
And I guess they really never thought when my brother was born, he right off the bat, he started having problems. And so they took him to the doctor and he was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis
So right as a baby.
right as a baby. And then 4 years later, they're like, hey, the cousins had it, the brother had it. I was tested right away and I had it. So
You were tested, but you weren't showing symptoms like your brother Neil.
right, because I was born with it. So
You were born with it, but you weren't showing at that time.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
How come? There's just no rhyme or reason to it?
No, no. So, and I know like they do nowadays, I guess I heard that they do genetic testings. A lot, I think mothers go through genetic testings. I could be wrong because I never birthed any kids, but I feel like I've heard people say that a lot of mothers get tested to see if they have the gene. So, and my two cousins, they were 16 and 17 or 17 and 18, and they died like 2 weeks apart.
Oh,
Because at that time, the life expectancy was only 18.
18 years old.
Yeah. So when,
Maybe we should have your parents on. Holy smokes. That's hearing that both of your kids. What's the age difference between you and.
four
Okay.
and a half. So he was, four and a half.
So you're older.
No, I'm younger.
Oh, okay. So they tested you right as a baby then?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Because he was showing some kind of
Yeah.
symptoms and all that.
Yeah.
And you obviously don't remember that.
No, I don't.
Yeah. So what did that mean for you though? What kinds of, I mean, you just read the definition, but for you personally, what were the challenges? Do you remember as a kid experiencing those?
Not really. It was very kind of just going to doctor's appointments every 3 months. And, you know, me and my brother had our own set of challenges when younger. Like right from the bat, we struggled with various different things and it wasn't health. So when I finally got into a stable home when I was 4, is kind of more what I remembered. That's a whole nother podcast. But anyway, so
Yeah.
mini series. But so I just remember going to the doctors. And at that time, because people with CF, you burn calories because your lungs are working hard over time.
Yep.
So keeping up weight was really, really important. So like way back then, like in the 1970s, 80s, whatever, we'd have to like count our calories. Like I remember going to doctor's appointments and my mom taking us to McDonald's. And we literally, it was kind of sad because now, you know, like more health stuff nowadays. But we would go to McDonald's and me and my brother would literally have like shakes to get all the calories we can. And at one time,
It'd be
like,
nice now, wouldn't it?
right? So we would have contests. So like if we went to the doctors, oh, hey, you put on 5 pounds. Here you go. Here's a little congratulations. You gained this much weight. I know, it's crazy. So that, yeah. So, doctors every 3 months, breathing into one of those, like breathing machines to check the volume of your lungs, and just taking, because one of the things what CF does is your body doesn't absorb lots of nutrition too. Okay. So like you're very low on vitamins. You don't digest your food without taking medicines for it and stuff like that. So
do you remember, did anyone, I'm assuming not, but did anyone ever tell you or accidentally let it slip that that you weren't supposed to live a long time when you were young?
I don't think so. The one thing about my mom and dad and growing up in the household that I was in, it was never made a big deal. Like basically we didn't let what we had define who we were, So not a lot of people, it wasn't made a big deal. Yeah. And that's just growing up in like a faith-based,
I was going to ask,
God-fearing home.
Obviously I know your parents, and they're strong believers.
Yeah.
They have a different church down Rhode Island or Southern Mass or
like near Chepachet. Yeah.
So your whole life then was in a Christian home?
Yeah.
So you don't really know anything else, but
right.
How did that, did that factor in for your parents and how they yes. raised you with yes. cystic fibrosis?
Yeah.
We trust God with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only time that really was like made known is one of the doctors, because at that time we lived in Providence. So we were going to a clinic in Providence, and they had suggested me and my brother go to a CF camp. So basically a bunch of kids that had CF. Like, yeah.
I know. I'm sure that's good. It just sounds...
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wasn't thrilled.
A lot of heavy sports games where everyone's breathing heavy. Jeez.
And I mean, I guess I get the doctor's thing. Like,
well, it's probably not... I mean, it's not uncommon, but it's
right.
not like you had 5 kids in your class. Were you homeschooled or did you go to school?
I went to school.
Yeah, so you didn't have like 5 kids in your school that all had CF.
Right.
So, yeah, obviously, you and your brother are both dealing with it, but he's older. And so going to camp at least...
Yeah. We got to see like-minded kids,
But some probably had a lot worse than
yes. And funny enough, not really funny, they actually end up shutting down the camps because fun fact, but not really fun fact, is people with CF have like different, I want to call them bugs, but they're basically like every person with CF is not alike. So there are people with CF that deal with more lung issues. There are people with CF that deal with more intestinal issues. And every person has their own bug inside them. So they were, the CF people and whatever doctors were seeing that all of us kids that were hanging around together, some kids were actually dying and getting really sick. So
because they were catching it from the other, it wasn't a mental thing.
It was because basically like you had this certain bug that your body was used to. Say you like
gave it to you,
gave it to me, and then my body couldn't fight it because it wasn't like used to what I had.
So I wouldn't be able to give it to a healthy child who didn't already have CF, but I could give it to you if you had CF.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they ended up shutting those camps down.
Now it's like, stay away from me.
Yeah, it's literally legit 6 feet apart.
Really?
Yeah.
The 6 feet apart.
Right?
The magic 6 feet.
So that changed everything.
No more camp.
Yeah, so
what do you remember about the camp? Do you remember it being helpful, or was it scary?
I don't.
You don't remember?
I don't remember. So young. I was young.
Yeah.
Maybe I think we went like twice, but it wasn't impactful at all. It's not like I made a lifelong friend. Do
you remember as a child? Because it was always part of your life, and your parents didn't make a big deal of it,
right?
And it was probably really good because you were just living life, right?
Yeah.
But do you remember any moment growing up when you were a little older where it did hit you or dawn on you that you're, what happened?
So, it really, things started. So when I was 9, I got diagnosed with diabetes.
Oh, and that's part of it.
Yes. Well, it's yes and no. Like you can develop diabetes when you're older in life, and it's called CF related diabetes. But I got diabetes when I was 9. So there's some hesitancy to be like, okay, did it run in my family? Which yes, it did. Like my grandmother was borderline diabetic.
So it could just be a separate.
Right. But now, like, according to
the
the doctor's notes, right, it's CF related diabetes.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So when I got diabetes, that's when, like, things started to change for me because I had to eat to gain weight, but then I had to control the diabetes.
Yeah.
You know, so like everything was like portion control, and I would have to go to the nurse's station to get insulin shots, and
you need to gain calories but not sugar.
Right.
That's what they used to call it back in the day.
Yeah.
I got the sugar.
The sugar. So people started to like, oh, well, why is she going to the nurse's station? And I was 9. So you're like in elementary school.
Yeah, but you're closing in on that preteen.
Yeah.
10, 11.
Yeah.
And that's not a fun time for girls.
Yeah.
Or boys, but definitely girls.
Yeah. No. So
be different to stand out, right?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was very quiet. Like, I know it's hard to believe. I know.
What
Shocker, newsflash. I was very like I had my own little shell and whatever. So I think that's really when things kind of like, and even then my mom and dad didn't make a big deal about it because, oh my gosh, I remember going to churches and we'd have to go up to the altar and I would get prayed over and, just very, God's going to heal me. And then whatever. So I got just used to the diabetes. I got used to going to the doctors and whatever.
How do you think that impacted, looking back now, because we look back at it and growing up in a Christian home, how do you think, and if so, how did your illness and the complications of it impact your faith in a negative way, a positive way?
I don't know, because I don't know. Like, it's hard to tell because I like sailed through my life, just, knowing God and, accepting Jesus in my life at a younger age. And, but I want to say when I moved out of my house when I was 21, things started to change for me. And I don't know how to answer that. Like, I feel like
it is hard to answer.
It is like, and I feel like to answer that question, we would have to actually go longer into my years of life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Because it was so intertwined with who you were and not, again, made a big deal of.
Yeah.
And yet, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
So I could see where it's difficult to see, like, if I didn't have it, would I have been as strong, or would my faith,
I don't think really nothing would have changed. Right.
Yeah. It wasn't until you were older and started. And so what were the differences between you and your brother, Neil, and how it attacked you?
So my brother had more of the lung issues.
Yes.
His breathing was it was more lungs. I kind of end up getting all the other stuff, like the diabetes. I ended up getting kidney disease, rheumatoid arthritis. Like, I got a lot of the internal stuff.
But the breathing's okay.
The breathing has always been fine.
Yeah.
There's been, people with CF, they end up getting the sticky mucus, and, you're prone to getting pneumonias. And my brother, so basically if you had like a exasperation, if that's what you want to call it, you would have to be in the hospital for 2 weeks with IV fluids and antibiotics, heavy antibiotics. Thankfully, we didn't start really going into the hospital until we got a little older. Like the first time I ended up having an exasperation was maybe I was in my 20s. My brother, maybe he was like in his 20s.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So you kind of go about life. When did you find out about the kidneys? Was it when you were an adult or as a child?
Oh, as an adult.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned moving out of the house. What was that? I mean, it seems
Not
like a
exactly the most, not exactly the most smoothest time in my life.
How come?
Because I made a rash decision. I was 21 years old. I wanted to be out on my own. I wanted to be a free woman.
All right. How come do you think?
Um,
I mean, that's a pretty common thing, so it's not like
it is.
But
a lot
for
of things,
you personally,
a lot of things led up to that, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
I don't want to point fingers or anything, but a lot of stuff led up to that. And I think also I went away to college, and I knew what it was like to be out on my own, and I really wanted to.
Where'd you go to college?
Wheelock.
Okay.
I went for 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you kind of got an idea of like,
Yeah. So, and that was kind of a stressful time because it wasn't a mutual move out. So, my body went through a lot of emotional stress. And honestly, God had his hand in my life because some of the decisions I made wasn't exactly the greatest. No, I'm not saying I did drugs or anything, but I definitely didn't care for myself like I should have been caring for myself.
Yeah.
Like at one point I stopped taking my insulin.
Yeah.
And, but I remember at that time I was nannying and my sugar was like 11 something. Like it was crazy. And literally I feel like God carried me through that because I was nannying and I was watching kids.
Yeah.
Thankfully, like I did end up moving in with good friends of mine because I had moved in with people that I worked for. They weren't Christians. And good friends of ours, the Wittens, they took me in. And I feel like that's when my life kind of like, okay, get it together, Jen. I met Jay in the process and went in the hospital and I was like, I'm never doing that again. So I feel like my health took a little scary turn. And in a couple of years, I was in the hospital every year. So
when you moved out and you felt like you wanted to be a free woman, but then you were, it was very stressful. What was your faith like right then? I'm not saying you lost faith or anything, but were you kind of freeing yourself a little bit from God too?
Well, like I always knew, but I definitely wasn't in the Word and I wasn't praying and I wasn't giving decisions over to God. Like, and I knew who I was. Like, I never doubted my faith and I never doubted that I wasn't a Christian, but I definitely decided to just do what I wanted to do.
And for how long was that about between?
A good couple of years.
Was it just moving in with the Wittens, or was there some catalyst that caused you to say, I need to wake up?
I don't know. I really don't. Like, I don't know if it's just like I started going back to church, and then I met Jay, and he never went to church, and then we started going to church together. So I just kind of like, it wasn't like a aha moment. It was just like, definitely thanking God that he protected my life, that, he's just, the one thing that I feel like has been constant is God has just carried me through every part of my life. I may not have acknowledged it, but looking back, I definitely feel like God has just never let me go.
No, he never does.
Nope. So, but yeah, and like yes, moving in with the Wittens was a much better situation for me,
Yeah,
you
they're
know.
going to
And
encourage you to
yeah,
do the right thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah. So that was like a little sketchy part, kind of like I'm gonna try to do it my way, and God's like, just kidding, come back.
Well, for you, that would have been scary. I mean, it's scary for anyone to do that. A lot of young adults do. It's a very normal thing to do, kind of
Yeah.
rebel a little bit from home and whatever. But for you, you know, with the diabetes and you know the
All that other stuff.
and all the other stuff, your health could decline real quick.
Yeah.
So God did spare you from all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
What was your relationship with Neil during that time? Was it?
It was tough. He was, I feel like
He still lived at home?
yes,
Yeah.
he did. I think it was a really tough situation. He was put in a tough situation.
Yeah.
You know, understandably, you know, like, so it was tough. We still maintained our relationship, but it was tough.
And your relationship with your parents at that time was a little strained?
Oh, yes. But I have to say, looking back, like, it just, like, there's just healing and forgiveness that has happened on my end and on their end.
It's a beautiful picture of
Yes.
how God wants us to be. And what a testimony for those who might have
Yeah.
a situation like that, not necessarily just with parents or an adult child, but,
Yeah.
you know, a friend or a sibling or anybody,
Yeah.
especially if it's been a while, you know. People sometimes just accept it as a reality. And for those who are in Christ, it doesn't have to be a reality.
No.
Forgiveness and reconciliation is one of the greatest fruit of, you know, it's humbling and it's acknowledging where you have wronged. Usually when there's a broken situation, both parties have almost always, whether it's 80-20, 50-50, there's just and then if you can't both own it, it's not going to usually have good reconciliation.
And like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like it didn't happen overnight. I mean, it was definitely,
It's a
we
process.
had our moments, but I completely agree. I think it's just the fact that we had God in the center of our, like, just everything, you know, and you know, we have a really great relationship, and
Sure.
you know, so
Yeah, it's having met you past all of that, it's hard to, not that, you know, it's shocking for me to hear. I've been a pastor for a while now, so
yeah,
I know these situations happen, but
yeah,
knowing your relationship with your parents and knowing them, knowing you, it's you wouldn't have known that. And that's a beautiful thing. It really is, you know.
it is.
And I think it's, even though, your parents might watch this and you want to be careful, and I get all that, but I do think it's important to share that aspect of your story because it's so common. Some variation of that is so common. My sister, who, you know, when Heather first met me, my sister's 7 years older than me, and when Heather first met me, we were in high school, and she's like, "Wait, so you have and she knew my older brother, but she's like, "You have a sister?" And I was like, "Yeah, where is she?" I was like, we don't really know."
Right?
And she had like moved out and moved in with her boyfriend, who my parents weren't at the time, who now they're married, and, you know, and my mom's no longer with us, but has a great relationship with my dad. And so there was just that short period of time, and she was very similar in age to what you're describing, that early 20s, where she, you know, she kind of wanted to be a free woman, like you described it, you know. So it's so common, and it's not, doesn't identify, it doesn't, it's not your identity.
No.
Yeah.
I agree.
But it's also a good warning for any young people who are watching, like, just calm down.
Right? Take a chill pill.
As they say, chill.
Chill.
So, okay, so you're with the Wittens. How long did it take for you to date and then eventually marry Jay?
That was like a year and a half.
Okay, pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick.
And he was going to church with you?
He started going to church.
Okay.
Like a little shortly after we met. So he definitely.
Did you meet him because he still works for the Wittens?
No, actually,
Yeah.
I met him because he was good friends with one of my friends.
Oh, okay. A little setup situation,
Yep,
or
a
a
little
little,
setup
yeah. Okay.
situation.
All
And
right.
he won me over with his like silly pickup lines. I know.
I mean, and his stunning good looks as well.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
Of course, of
that's
course.
obvious.
I mean, but he is much older than me. I
Yeah.
actually knew him because he was working at Domino's with my friend. So I would go and say hi to my friend, and they'd be like, he like, oh look, there's JJ, and like, oh look, there's Jen. I was like 18. I was like, "Pff, okay, whatever.
How much older is Jay than you?
um,
Approximately.
let's see. Hold on, I'm not good at math. He's 53, and I'm 46.
Yeah, so 7.
Sorry, Jay. I told everyone your age.
It's really not a big deal now.
No,
7,
it's really not.
7 is, but at the time, 25, 18. Yeah.
Right. Or when you look at it
19.
where like I was in 10th grade and he was graduating high school, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Or 5th grade and he was graduating high school.
Yeah. Yeah. The younger you are, the creepier it is. For
Right?
Sure. Yeah. You used to be like Bill Belichick. It's like, that's just disgusting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But, and it's funny because.
7 years is as you get,
Yeah.
And eventually when you're both like in your 80s, it's like nothing.
Right. Serious. I don't even look at it. Well,
You'll
it's funny
surpass them.
because the first date that me and Jay went on, Bob answered the door and he goes, oh, no. You're not dating her. Because I'm like his little sister.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you got serious with Jay, obviously you told him about your health conditions.
Yes.
Had the kidney thing happen yet?
I think it was on the verge of it. But
Okay,
it
so
wasn't
right
like,
around
it
then.
didn't really like play
Yeah.
that much of an issue. Yeah.
Did he just kind of accept it? Because it didn't
Yeah.
really seem to impact you that much. Some doctor's appointments, but it's not
Yeah.
like you were
No.
walking around with an
And
oxygen tank.
he was actually with me at the worst because Denise had gone up to Jay and was like, listen, I know you're not married and I know it's not really your place, but you need to take Jen to the hospital. Like, clearly,
Why?
she is not taking care of yourself. That's when I
Oh, you
kind of
still
stopped
okay?
taking insulin and stuff. And so Jay saw me basically at the worst, like when I was like in the hospital, and he didn't run away. So
I mean, he's probably not going to run. No, Jay, he's not going to do it.
no, he's not a runner.
Walks somewhat swiftly away.
But
He's
no,
like, run. Nah, I'll just stay.
Right,
He'll be fine.
exactly. So
You got things under control. When did you? So, kidney disease. Tell me about how did you find that out?
just routine. I get routine blood
Right.
work all the time.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
So, and they're always checking your kidney functions, your liver functions, this function, this. I always joke because, like, if you looked at my blood work, like, all the abnormal is like normal to me. Do you get what I'm saying?
Sure.
So that's just kind of, they started noticing the kidney levels going up, and so.
So what does that mean? Meds?
Yeah.
Basically.
I take like a little handful of meds every day.
Yeah. And how are the kidneys now?
They're still up there.
Yeah.
I went from like to like a level 3, but honestly, I've been at a level 3 for years.
Yeah.
So
That's really good.
yeah,
Kidneys are nothing you want to lose. That's for sure. Ugh.
that is true. Yeah. And then like back in like 2007, like I started to get pains in my legs and my joints, and come to find out that I ended up having reactive rheumatoid arthritis, which basically instead of a cold, the cold kind of goes into your joints. And all these little things kind of play into the breakdown of the CF, because it affects all those major parts of your body. So
Yeah, that's just, it's on one hand, it's so much to deal with physically, but it's something that I guess, even though it's progressive, so it's not, but for the most part, you've had to deal with it your whole life.
yeah.
How do you, because I mean, anyone who meets you says, oh, Jen's such a positive person, bubbly person, looking on the bright side of things.
Yeah.
How are you able to, do you think, maintain that despite?
I don't know. Like, honestly, like, I think it's just like, I feel like God's just given me that outlook. Do you know what I'm saying? And I also know that he's not just going to be like, see you later, Jen. Like, I just know within my heart of hearts that God has me. And I think that's why, don't get me wrong, like when I got diagnosed with the colon cancer, I had my moments where I was like down and out. Like I'm not like oh, but I don't think it affects me because I just know that God has me.
Mm.
Like,
Has throughout the process, have there ever been any seasons where you doubted that?
no,
Yeah, that's great.
I really haven't. Like, I just, yeah, no. I don't think I've ever really questioned why I'm going through this.
Mm.
I mean, I don't mean to like not cliche or anything or like, oh, that's what she's just saying, but really that's honestly truly how I feel, that just God has just been there with me for so many different areas of my life. Even when I was just like, I can do this, like God's like, no, I got you.
Mm. Yeah.
So
So, when did you find out you had cancer?
2021. 3 years. Actually, next week will be 3 years since
How did
I
you
finished.
find that out? Just through routine tests, or were you experiencing?
No, so because of the CF, people are prone to get polyps. And so it was like, let's go for a colonoscopy. I was like, I don't want a colonoscopy. I'm only like 41 years old. That's like when you're 50. Sorry, Pastor Jamie. We'll talk.
I've had one.
Oh, you have?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm already in the club.
Okay.
I'm knocked out. It's totally fine.
Right?
As long as
It's
you're
the
knocked out.
prep that's the worst.
Oh, yeah. The prep's the worst. The prep is just so
Yeah.
bad.
So
Apparently, it's getting a little better. Do you still have to do them routinely or no?
So I'm on actually, I had one when did I have
They
one?
say like you can take pills and stuff now.
Jay has to take pills, and it's like so easy.
Yeah.
I have to drink 2 gallons.
How come? Why can't you take the pills? Because
Because of the CF.
you're Jen.
Mm-hmm. Yup, because
Gotta
I'm
make sure
right.
you're drinking that chalk right down.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
that's
remember
brutal.
one time when they had the colonoscopy, they found the polyp and they were really shocked. I would have never even guessed it either. And I had almost 2 colonoscopies in that year, because then you go for the one, and then when they found it, they had to like tattoo an area because they said they were going to remove part of my colon. So I had to do another drink and tattoo that area. And I remember I had to do 2 gallons, and I looked at those gallons. I was like, I'm going to make these mountains move. And I was like, you move, mountains.
Okay.
So I chugged those things down. And
Faith in the struggle. Colonoscopy episode.
That will go down with no problem.
Oh, man.
But now I had one, and now I'm on the 3-year plan now.
Praise God.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you get diagnosed with that, there had to have been at least a moment where you're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean,
Obviously, I knew you when you were going through that, but just like kind of looking back.
I actually think it really affected Jay more than me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder why. Just obviously your wife having cancer is rough.
Yeah.
But I wonder why it was more than you.
I think just because like he's seen everything I've gone through.
Yeah. He was a little angrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And me,
Can we
I
catch
just
a break
like,
here? Yeah.
I was like, okay, God, you're not going to let me down. So let's do this thing. And honestly, through that whole time, my faith got so much stronger.
How come?
I don't know. I think I was in a different place in my life because, yes, growing up in a Christian home and, having the ups and downs, I feel like for a while, I kind of really got away from that relationship part of my walk. And there was one day that I was talking to someone, and I think the year before, I think I just got baptized. And it was just like that conversation I had with that friend. It's just like, it was like a wake up call. Like, okay, let's go back to my first love. And I started just having that relationship that I feel like I had gone away from for a while.
What did that mean for you, that relationship? Like What did that mean?
Like I was just in the word more, like I was just like, like I changed some of the things that I was doing, not like I was like doing anything awful, but like I just had like this renewed faith, um, and I also believe that there's a season, like God puts you in seasons of your life for a specific reason, and I think just having that outlook, I think just really, okay, like God, you're not letting me go, so I'm just going to trust you. And so, yeah. And at that time, I had just finished doing the first book of the 2-7 series.
Yeah.
So, like, I was memorizing scriptures and I was reading more. So,
kind of coincided where you were growing your faith already. Now you're hitting this.
Yeah.
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 It's almost like God was preparing you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, Jay's dad, Pops, had lived with us at that time. And while I was going through the chemo, he ended up having a stroke and having a heart attack. So I couldn't work because I was working in childcare. And with all this stuff going on in my body, they're like, you're not even going near kids right now. So I was home.
To take care of Pops.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was the chemo like?
I was actually really scared because you hear all these like chemo stories, like people like being down and sick and like losing their hair and, all that. I mean, granted, like some chemos are probably worse than others.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really sick. I mean, the only major thing that I struggled is I couldn't touch anything cold and I couldn't drink anything cold. And it's just like, I wasn't a milk drinker, but I really wanted milk. But I couldn't because it would come out of the refrigerator and it was cold. It was the medicine that they had given me.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, like, I had like an unexplainable joy, which is so weird because you were like, oh, you're going through cancer. But like I was like talking to people at like the dollar store and explaining everything and just really like just coming out of my shell and talking about how God's helping me through this and he's carrying me through. And I met a guy named Jonathan and I shared my faith with him. He got saved, that whole story. But like it was just such a growing time for me. I know it sounds weird, but it really was.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't wish it on anybody, but at the same time, the growth. It's like we can't go through. It's like we can't grow closer to the Lord without going through these things.
Yeah,
we can, but
and then I think about just how, like thinking about it, like I feel like God's like hand was like in everything, like my daughter, she wasn't around to witness the thing. She was in Georgia visiting her boyfriend. I was home for Pops when he ended up having that stroke. And then, I think of my brother and he unfortunately wasn't around for that, so how would he have been affected with that? Like all these little different pieces.
Yeah, he was protected from having to watch you go through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the things during the cancer time that people did for you that was especially a big blessing? Was there specific things?
So during that time, and I remember having this conversation, we were talking about friends and I remember calling you about like the friends and you did that little outlet story with me with all the little plugs and so I really when that happened, I really felt like God was filling up my little outlet because, I had just finished doing the first study of the 2-7 series. So I met a bunch of incredible women and they prayed for me, like after I had the surgery, I had meals and just people checking in on me and seeing how I was doing. The financial piece was such like a testimony, like I went from working 40 hours a week to like none.
Yeah.
So that was a big hit financially. We didn't know what we were going to do, but I just trusted God that he would take care of us. Jay trusted God he would take care of us, and we were above and beyond blessed. You know, and we had another friend that was going through something, and like we were able to bless them. You know, so it just like there was one day we ended up getting a $10,000 check in the mail anonymously. And it wasn't anonymous because God had a plan, but it was just like it was just yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna trust you, God. Okay.
yep. And even when it came to my job, like after I was all done with the chemo, it's like, okay, God, what am I going to do? You know, am I going back to childcare? I didn't want to go back to childcare. Like I was done.
Yeah.
And then literally God found a job for me where I'm able to work part-time. I'm able to take care of myself. I'm in a godly company, work for a godly man, like able to work with my husband.
I'm sure he's happy about that.
Is that another podcast?
That's probably for him. Yeah.
What's your struggle, Jay? But yeah.
So take me back to Neil's story. You obviously, when you reconcile things with your parents, that probably included, not that you needed to necessarily reconcile with him, but I'm assuming that drew you closer to him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because he didn't feel like
he had to pick
he didn't have to pick a side.
He's still living at home and all that, or?
He was, yep. Yeah. So my brother was a nomad, I like to call him. He got out of living with my mom and dad. He never really found a place to rest on his own head. He would live with various people, and he spent 2 years on our couch. So he lived with me, Jay. At that time, we had Pops, we had Jay's brother, and we had my brother. Quite the little family.
There you go.
In our 2-bedroom house. So he lived with us for a while, and you know, my brother had his own struggles. He had a lot of battles that he was dealing with within his own self. So if my brother was here, he probably would tell you those, but
yeah.
So it was tough for him, and his health started to decline. And I don't know if it's just the way that it was, the illness progressing with him, or, you know, maybe he wasn't taking care of himself the way he should have. I mean, who knows?
Right. Hard to know.
You know, it is hard to know. So.
Yeah.
At one point, he took off to live into Michigan, so we
Right.
didn't see him for a while and stuff like that. But thankfully, he came home.
Yeah. And then what year? How long did you know that his life was?
So in 2019, he had gone to the hospital for a clean out. That's what they used to call it, clean out. And he was going in much more frequently. Before, he would go into it, and it would be like a little oil change. Like, okay, we're good to go for another 5,000 miles, 3,000 miles. But as he was going in the hospital more, his recovery wasn't as long. So he would actually go in twice a year for his clean outs. And this one particular time is in January. His doctor called me and says, listen, I have to tell you, he's not going to live till Christmas. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, how can you put a life sentence or a death sentence on someone when you even, like, yeah, I know he's having lung problems and his lung capacity is like 20%, but well, how are you telling me he's going to live till December? Like, whatever. And my brother had a really great outlook on life too. He was, if like you told him that, he'd be like, no, that's not the case, you know? So, he left Michigan, came back to live with me and Jay, and he was on oxygen more, you know, but I tell you, he still worked. He still drove Uber. He still did this with his oxygen tank.
Yeah.
Not exactly the smartest move, but whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, but, still believing that, God has a plan for him. So is he really going to live till Christmas time? Who knows?
Yeah.
It didn't stop him from doing what he was doing. It didn't stop us for praying that, his health would change or whatever.
And what happened?
So, in June, he was just like, I have to go back in. I was like, okay. And so it was June 2019. And that stay was like just his normal stay, cleaning out and, whatever. And I end up meeting with a lot of his doctors. I end up really like, not that, I mean, yes, I'm the younger sister, but I definitely was the older sister.
Yeah.
And so I met a lot with his doctors. So I kind of knew what was going on. Mom and Dad would meet me, and we would all have conferences and stuff. And I still think Neil thought he was coming home.
Mm.
And I remember telling him, because they're like, he needs more oxygen. Like, he's not able to maintain his levels.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was working full time. Jay was working full time. And I remember telling him, like, listen, you're not going to be able to come home. There's no one in the home to really understand and care for you. So, like, I remember he just looked really disappointed,
How did you feel disappointing him like that, even though you
It
had
was
to?
hard. It really was,
Yeah.
because, and I don't know if at that time you realized, oh, this is it for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was hard telling him he wasn't going to come home. So that was like, okay, we'll just send him to rehab, whatever. So.
Did you ever, was it more difficult for you to watch him go through that because you also have what he has, even though it's manifests itself differently?
Mm-hmm. I think there was a little guilt
That
in
you
a
have
way.
it better in a little.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not that it's a competition, but
Yeah. I think there was a little guilt. I definitely had more guilt after he passed away. Like, why am I here and he's not? Mm-hmm.
Did God answer that question yet?
I kind of in a way, but another thing that I was going through was the guilt of what I should be praying for. Should I be praying for his healing, or like, do I feel guilty that I don't think he's going to get healed, that I think he's going to die? Because that's not what we grew up in. We grew up in that God's going to heal you, and, all the times that, like, we've gone prayed over. But now in my head, I'm thinking, I don't think he's coming back from this. Like, so I was feeling like, how should I be praying? And I remember coming to you and having a conversation with you. And you said, well, his healing might be God calling him home.
Yeah.
And then you so generously met him. And I remember he was so excited. He was just like, I can't wait to go to Cornerstone when I get out.
Sad that never was able. Well, we had the death march. Those were not at Neil's funeral. We had
dun 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 dun.
We got Brody all excited. Come here, buddy.
Oh, sorry, Brody.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the death march was a unique way of
right.
Darn. Hey.
But so yeah, so then like July 6th is when he went home. So
July
he was
6th. Yeah.
He was in he went in June and he never came back home.
Yeah.
Like
a month in the rehab type place.
In hospital rehab. And I remember, like, my dad and mom saying there, and I think my dad said at one point he realized that his ultimate healing was God him going home.
Yeah. So is that when you felt the guilt, or was it
Well, so mom and dad had left. He was at like a rehab in like Leicester. Mom and dad left, and I was sitting alone with him. Jay was finishing a project in the bathroom at the house, and I remember just holding his hands and like apologizing that like that he couldn't come home, and that maybe that it was my fault, that if, I said he could come home, that maybe he would have fought harder, you know.
Oh. Yeah, he felt like maybe he gave up because you said it isn't happening.
Yeah.
It's a lot on your shoulders, It's a lot.
Yeah.
What was your prayer life like when you were going through that?
I journaled a lot.
Okay.
The one thing that
you always journal, or is that something you were doing?
I had started to journal.
Yeah. And what is that like when you say journal? Not everyone does it. So what do you mean?
Like, I just basically like write my prayers out to God. I basically have a conversation with God.
Yeah.
I wasn't fully doing it because I still was kind of like, I don't think I was as like strong as I was when I had the colon cancer, but I just
this
really
is before the colon cancer.
Yeah, this was before.
Yeah.
But I would like write my prayers out and like, and just really just give it to God. Like, I mean, that's the only thing I could do because it's just like I didn't really know.
What do you think the benefit for you journaling is?
Just kind of letting it all out there. Like being able to express beginning to expressing yourself.
Yeah.
Like
focuses you in, and you're able to just kind of let it go on paper.
Yeah. And then I really started journaling more like after I was doing the 2-7 series, because then I would write down what I'm reading in the Bible and certain things. But yeah. So and then honestly, I think one of the most precious moments that I had, I know it's gonna sound weird, but Jay had come, and it hadn't rained, and I remember saying, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do if he actually dies right now, like being afraid to like watch it happen. And I was like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, because like his room, there was a bathroom in his room. And I literally like came out of the bathroom, and he literally, Neil's eyes like opened wide up, and he looked right at me, and then he took his last breath.
Oh, wow.
So it was just like, in that moment, I feel like I got that reassurance that it was okay. So.
That's a very complicated relationship. And I don't say that like, complicated usually sounds bad. And I don't mean it that way. That you had, he's your brother. And you both in different ways, but you're dealing with the same thing. And that's sort of a shadow over your relationship from day one, but it also brings you closer in a way that some siblings might not be.
Yeah.
Now you watch him go through that while you're not. You have your own issues, but not that, not death, not close to death. You got a chance to get married and all that, and things worked out for you in that way. I mean, that's a heavy load that you probably still carry sometimes.
Well, and I also, another thing is after he died, I also felt like it was my fault that he died, because I started thinking, oh my gosh, did I get him sick? Did I kill him? Because I was with him through the whole month. Like, remember I mentioned how like people with CF, they can actually get each other sick.
Right. You had your own little camp CF. And
Yeah. So I was just like, oh my gosh, did I kill my brother?
Oof,
like,
man.
And
did you talk to someone about any, not just like a doctor, but
no,
a counselor, or
no,
just
I remember talking to one of my friends, and they're like, no, Jen, you didn't kill your brother. Stop being dumb. Yeah. And actually, that was a time that movie 6 Feet Apart came out. I don't know if you've heard of that movie, but it was like about a story of a woman who was getting a lung transplant, and she had CF, and she couldn't have a relationship with someone because she felt like it was going to compromise everything. And everyone's like, Jen, don't watch it. I was like, no, I'll be fine. Was not.
No. Yikes. Oh, wow.
So,
So now it's been
5
5
years.
years,
Yeah.
right? Because 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Any, have you come to grips with it all?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually look at it saying that God protected him, because the year after that is when COVID hit.
Yeah, COVID. And
I would never
if he got COVID, that would have been it.
there. And he wasn't very smart. I love him to pieces, but he wasn't a very smart guy. He probably would have still been driving around with his oxygen tank.
Yeah.
But I think about how many hours I spent with him in the hospital, how many hours my mom and dad spent with him in the hospital. We would have never been able to do that.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think of that.
So I feel like God just really protected him. So that's kind of the perspective I have now, is God really took him at the right opportunity.
What was COVID like for you? Now, obviously, I knew you at the time, but like, was there fears because of your condition? You're like, it is what it is, man.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But then,
I did.
But you also, the cancer, that was 2021.
Yeah.
So that was kind of
That was
still in the
after.
midst. It
Yeah.
was after the lockdown and all that, but
Yeah.
we were still dealing with it.
Yeah. My doctors were more concerned. Like, they're like,
But you didn't ever really have the breathing issues. So that would have been the biggest problem if you'd gotten like the COVID pneumonia. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I actually did get it
Yeah.
3 times. I actually got it when I went through chemo. Right.
It's you. Your body's like, bring it.
Come on, let's go. And I ended up it literally was just like a minor cold, and that was it.
Yeah.
All the doctors like, oh my gosh, like, don't get COVID, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Right?
What do you want? We're all getting this stupid
Do you
thing.
see the shield around me? God's got me. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, man. So as you look at a lot of these things, you're still going through it. You still got the kidney thing. It's in good place.
Yeah.
You got the joint issues,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do you think it shaped you? How do you think God has
I
used
think
it?
he's just really, I'm just learning to trust him so much more. Like, just, yeah, and granted, like, I get nervous and I get anxious, when I go for my testing and stuff. It's like, okay.
Especially the cancer. You don't want that. Again.
Right.
Ugh.
I mean.
The rest of the stuff you've been dealing with, it feels like for
right.
your whole life.
Yeah. And, and I do get frustrated, but like normal things that probably wouldn't frustrate people, like one of the things I think that still lingers is I get tired so much more easily, and I don't know if it's just how much the chemo affected my body,
Getting old.
Yeah. I like that answer better. Actually, I don't, because I don't want to be old. But I actually am really excited to be 50.
Well, you got 4 years for that.
Right? But I think it's just because, like, I am so thankful when I wake up knowing that, like, I'm alive, that God has just given me another day to be a joy to someone, be, a testimony to someone, just let his light shine through me. Like, I don't know. Like, and granted, I have my moments where I'm just like, ugh,
You wouldn't be human if you didn't.
Right.
Or you'd be like, I wouldn't trust you. I'd be like, she's faking.
Yeah.
Because everybody has their down
Oh,
moments.
trust me, I don't fake anything.
Exactly. So that means you have your down moments,
Yeah.
How has God been able to use, not necessarily just the CF or something specific, but just your struggles? How has he used that for you to help others?
Empathy. Like, I really look at what people have been going through, like death especially, losing my brother, losing Pops.
Yeah.
I just really like just an understanding of what people go through, and I just want to be there for the people that are going through it more.
Yeah.
And I just want to be I just want to be a light in that situation, that like, hey, it's okay. Like, don't give up. Just trust God. Or even if you're not a Christian, just don't give up. Like, what can I do for you to help you go through this?
And do you feel like that because you've gone through things, it gives you a little bit more of a little bit more cred, to be able to say those things, like, if somebody who's everything's worked out. I mean, and no one's life works out great, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But with all the suffering and struggles and everything, for you to say, hey, God is good in this, like, it's hard for me to, or anyone, to just be like, come on, man, what do you know? Right?
Yeah.
It's like you have that resume to say, no, I do know.
Right.
I know. And I could have chosen to give up or just be like angry or bitter or frustrated all the time. But
yeah,
what would be the point of that?
Right.
And instead you embrace the fact that God has you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if you weren't feeling it or don't feel it in the moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I always say it's my one-hit wonder, and it's really not my one-hit wonder. But when I met Jonathan, like, that gave me such an opportunity to share Christ with someone, and he ended up getting saved.
Yeah.
So it's just like God definitely used that moment, and people were praying for him. And measly me comes along with the Bible and a Bible verse, and
to be God's answer prayer that God uses.
Yeah.
Man, I wonder, sometimes it's like, we don't really know how often. You couldn't tap dance down there, buddy. We don't really know how often that's the case. You saw it with Jonathan, but when we encourage someone, smile, someone, give someone a hug, make someone a meal, we really don't know what that's going to do. And we don't always know how that's an answer to prayer, maybe for the person, but maybe for someone else, know? And it's just being obedient, just willing to do what God's called us to do in the moment.
Yeah. And even in that moment where you could just sit there and be like, oh bother, this is happening to me, but right? Instead, embrace the moment and just make the best of it.
And don't wait until you feel perfect, because it ain't gonna happen.
No, no.
And I'll help someone once I'm better, and it's like, well, yeah. I mean, there's certain cases where, you need to get better, but it's never going to be a perfect time. It's never going to be a time where everything's worked out and everything feels great.
Yeah,
that firsthand.
Yeah.
What are some ways to help people when they're going through it that you found are effective? Like what do people need? Tell us.
I mean, I feel like what I'm going to say is the common answer, but just be there for someone, I mean.
And in what ways? What does that mean? Because we do say that, but.
Say, I knew you were going to ask that.
Really? Good. You're not unprepared then. What's the answer?
Oh, I didn't say I had an answer.
Oh.
I don't know.
Probably depends, right?
Yeah, like, I guess see what they need, like, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer.
Mm-hmm.
But how I like to put it is know your audience.
Yeah. Right.
Like, one
person, what might be a help to someone won't be to someone else.
I like to feed people with food. A friend of mine, his dad was going through something, and I called the church and be like, hey, listen, I know he's not a member of the church, but this is what he's going through, Mm-hmm. So I was able to help them with food, so I guess I feel like food is always good, but some people have allergies and they don't want to be fed, so it's just
No, but I like
know your audience.
Yeah, I like how you put it. It's being receptive. There's no canned, this is how you're going to be blessed. It's being there, looking, praying, saying, okay, what I think this person just needs is a chuckle or a smiling face.
I can always give someone a chuckle. God has given me that ability, that's for sure.
Are they laughing with you or at you?
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
Right, exactly. As long as I would tell my dad, go to work and put a smile on someone's face today. So,
Yeah.
so if I can put a smile on someone's face, then I feel like God has using that gift.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, I think this is a huge blessing for anyone who watched this episode because you've had so many things through the years, not just one event or one episode, grief, one sickness, varying different complications of different degrees, and you could have easily given up. And I don't necessarily mean like end your life, give up, but just we all meet those people, and it's very sad. It's obvious they've just given up.
Mm-hmm.
They're just existing, and they're not happy at all. They have no joy.
Yeah.
And it's like through Christ, you've clearly shown, no, I have a joy that's eternal.
Yeah.
And it's such a testimony to people say like, I can have that, even if I'm going through it right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
in the midst of it all.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to be happy all the time because that's a completely different thing.
That's an emotional, circumstantial thing. But joy is found in Christ.
Yeah.
And that this will pass. It is even for Neil, it was temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Green tape type stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
That's where the struggles are.
I also really believe that there's a season, God has a season for everyone's life. You know, I look back and, you know, there was a season when I was able to stay, like when I was going through chemo, I was able to help Pops out. You know, if I was still working full time, I would have never been there for Pops when he got really bad, you know?
Yeah, it's such a neat perspective. And God doesn't always show us how that worked out, but sometimes he does. And it's so cool to be like, okay, that's what you were doing, God. Huh. Yeah. And where it should resonate most is when we don't see it right now.
Yeah.
Why this? Why am I going through this? Why is someone I love going through this? God's doing something. I just can't see it right now. I got to trust him.
Yeah. It really is just about trust. It really is. One of the things that was the Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, like, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And it's not my understanding, because my understanding looks like, oh, this is never going to end.
Right.
You know, like I see what's happening. I see blah, 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 but God's got a bigger plan.
Yeah, you see the storm. He sees what's coming out of the storm.
Yeah.
And if you stop, you're standing in the middle of the storm. You ain't getting out. If you go backwards, just keep going and trust him.
Yeah.
But so much easier said than done. That's why I really wanted to have you on, because I really do admire you. I admire how you're able to clearly show that joy to people, even though you don't always feel great and haven't always felt great. And it's such a great witness and example. And it is for me, because it's like sometimes, especially physical, I'm such a baby. Like, if I don't feel good, forget it. Yeah. And it's not like the man cold thing. I can bust through a cold. It's usually like nausea or physical pain. And it's like, man, to know like you've gone through most of your life, varying degrees of it, and still do, and yet maintain a joy in Christ. Yeah. It is attainable. It is because of him. And it should bolster anyone's faith who watches you. Well,
that's my prayer, you know, for anyone who's just going through something, like, God's got you, you know, like, I know it doesn't feel like it, but he really does. You know, there's when I go to my doctors, there's like, I check out, there's like this picture of like a skeleton, and the guy's like, I got your back. And he has like the backbone.
I have a t-shirt with that exact thing.
Do you really?
Heather wears it all the time because it's too big. Pastor Bob gave it to me.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't really wear it because it probably, you probably could only find it in one size. It's like an XL.
Yeah.
So it's a little too big for me to be walking around. And it's a little odd too, but it was such a great gift because he was just saying that to me. I got your back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Heather wears it a lot of times
Right?
to bed.
So see, God's got your back. God's got your back.
Yeah. And then he calls us to have each other's back, which
Yeah.
is so great. You're not meant to go through this alone. Yeah.
No. And that's another thing. And I don't know, like the timing wise, but that's another thing is like through this, God has really given me people that like will check in on me physically, but spiritually too, because I stink at the area of discipline and I stink at like being consistent and stuff, but through the church, God has given me people that be like, hey, what's going on with you? You're a little quiet on that end, you know, but so it's so important to just have the accountability, you know, of just people praying for you and just being like, hey, how are you doing? Because believe it or not, like the struggles that I have from my health, I feel like they're not struggles, but really sometimes what I struggle with the most is just continuing to walk this walk.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the hardest when things are good or just another Tuesday.
Yeah.
You know, or just it's not a bad day.
Yeah.
It's not a great day. It's just a day to be consistent then. So sometimes the storms, as hard as they are, we have nowhere to turn but God, and we can see it, and there can be a real, like you said, a real high, a real spiritual high to that, especially when you come out of it.
Yeah.
Or if there's great joys in your life, then sure, there's great praise. But it's
Yeah.
like just most days aren't either of those.
Right.
They're just Tuesdays.
Yeah. Right. Got to abide and stay in that boat.
Yeah. But I think your point there is community, you know, church family. And for anyone who's watching, it's like, you know, I go on Sundays or whatever to plug in, do a small group, do a 2-7 series, which is, you know, there's one coming up. We'll be announcing that Haley's going to lead. And so just do something like that or plug into ministry. You need relationships where you'll get those people and they need you, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and you'll find those sockets like we talked about.
I was going to say, my little plugs are being filled up. Jay, he likes his two sockets,
baby.
He's like, no more than 2, Jen, no more than 2. I was like, but let me just fit one in for you.
Can't work that way. Nope. Some have 2, some have like 10, but eventually we do reach a back.
So yes.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Yeah. Well, great. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Wasn't that bad.
No, you're losing sleep for no reason.
Right.
Anyone who's thinking about coming on, telling their story, Jen's a perfect picture. You can't be as bad as her, no.
Pretty sure my knots have knotted.
Good. No, it'll be a great blessing, and anyone who knows you and maybe only knows the face and now feel more comfortable coming up and saying hello.
Yeah, because 9 times out of 10, people don't know.
No, we never know what. That's one of the things this podcast does is it gives people a chance to be like, oh, I just thought everyone was doing great. Nope.
We are a hot mess down here.
Precisely the opposite.
Hot mess.
The only one who's great is God. We're just sort of clinging to him.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and you can get some good sleep tonight.
Okay. Well, actually, last night I slept
All right.
good because I
Holy
gave it to
Spirit's
God.
good. Yeah. Amen.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And cut.